Hi everyone. This past weekend, I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and stopped by the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art to see their brand new exhibit entitled Mapping the Heavens. So, I figured I'd give you a tour of the exhibit, as well as my thoughts. First off, if you're interested in checking out the exhibit, it is located in Gallery 203, and it will be available until January 11th, 2026. General admission to the museum is free. While some special galleries do cost extra, the Mapping the Heavens exhibit is part of the free offerings. And that's probably a good thing, as the exhibit is pretty limited. Outside the room that the exhibit is in, we're greeted with a brief introduction to astrolabes. What struck me as odd is that this section focuses only on one of the uses for astrolabes, determining where along the horizon and at what time the sun will rise, but fails to actually connect with the premise of the exhibit, which is unsurprising since astrolabes are not a tool that are meant for mapping the heavens. Also outside the actual exhibit is a page from a 15th century Islamic manuscript showing the astrologer Buzurg Umid advising the Iranian king Khosrow on when to go to war. This is certainly a cool piece, but again, fails to connect to the actual theme of the exhibit, at least as far as the exhibit title goes. The exhibit does have a subtitle of Art, Astronomy, and Exchange between the Islamic Lands and Europe. It seems to me that this was the real theme of the exhibit and that Mapping the Heavens was just punchier. Lastly, before entering the gallery, we have a display case with 3 items. The first is a 19th century decorative astrolabe with Hebrew inscriptions. We also have a 19th century Jacob's Quadrant and an early 17th century text on astrolabes. Heading into the exhibit itself, we're immediately greeted by a 13th century astrolabe. The relevance is still not spelled out, but at least this one is a fully functional astrolabe with a reat, which would be the pointers indicating the positions of important stars. To me, the most important piece of this exhibit with regards to mapping is a 16th century copy of Ptolemy's Almagest. The copy is open to the first page of Book 7, which is the first of 2 books that contains Ptolemy's Catalogue of Stars, but that catalog comes later in the book. The page it's open to is simply an argument that stars keep a fixed orientation relative to one another. Additionally in the exhibit, we have a page from Al-Sufi's Book of Fixed Stars, showing an image of Capricorn. Personally, I would have liked to see it spelled out better that the Book of Fixed Stars is a successor of the Almagest in that it made use of Ptolemy's star catalog, but with updated coordinates for precession. We do get some further continuity in that next to Al-Sufi's Capricorn, we have a copy of John Bayer's Uranometria also showing Capricorn. That being said, the Uranometria is somewhat disconnected in this lineage because the stellar positions that Bayer used came largely from Tycho Brahe, who I don't recall seeing mentioned in the exhibit. Another connection to the Almagest lies just to its left in the same case and is a later period copy of the 13th century Alphonsine tables. This text is firmly Ptolemaic in its cosmology, although it made use of the later idea of trepidation when it came to modeling the precession of the equinoxes. Another text that used the concept of trepidation was Nicholas Copernicus's De Revolutionibus, and the gallery has a first edition copy of this text on display. But instead of discussing the connection to trepidation, the tag instead focuses on Copernicus making use of a concept from the Persian astronomer Al-Tusi. Again, the gallery seems to focus more on the communication between cultures. Mapping does come into play a bit more as we begin moving past the invention of the telescope, as there is also a 1627 copy of Julius Schiller's Coelum Stellatum Christianum, in which Schiller presents his own set of star maps, but has Christianized them in an attempt to remove pagan influences. We also have a 1661 copy of Andreas Callarius's Harmonia Macrocosmica and a 1690 copy of Johann Hevelius's Prodromus Astronomiae. Overall, the exhibit is a wonderful collection of beautiful documents that I very much enjoyed seeing, but it didn't do a very good job of telling the story that it promised and was quite small. Many of the items on display were on loan from the Linda Hall Library, also in Kansas City, and having looked through the Linda Hall Library's catalog, there are a few other texts that I think would have been more relevant to this exhibit than some of the ones they had on display. However, it was still worth the visit while I was in town anyway, and I was able to stop by several other galleries which were truly impressive. So, if you have a chance, I highly recommend giving the Nelson Atkins Art Museum a try.